Hello and welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Football Forecast. I'm your host, Trevor Scott, and today I'm going to be going over 3 different mock drafts that I did from the 5 slot in a 10-team, 3 wide receiver Superflex league. We're still looking to hit our 750 subscriber goal, so if you're new here, please hit that subscribe button. So let's get into the 3 different teams that I drafted here. So you can see from the 5 slot, even from a 10-team Superflex league, I went with Jaden Daniels first in all of these drafts. I do feel like in my home league and where I would want to be drafting and who I would want to be drafting at that slot, it is Daniels. So, I think there is kind of a tier up top of 5 players that include Daniels, but also Jefferson, Lamar, Allen, and Chase. So I do like all 5 of those players. So I do really like the 5 spot this year. So going down into round 2, a reason I really like the 5 spot is I feel like I can always get one of the top 8 receivers. And we've talked about that a lot, how we really want to get our number 1 wide receiver from that group. And doing this, you're able to get a top end quarterback and you're able to still get one of those receivers. And I really like the start to those teams. So you can see one time I took Nico, and then 2 other times I took Puka. If it's Brian Thomas Jr., I think that's a great pick. But any one of those receivers from the top 8 is a great selection in round 2. And then coming back down around to round 3, you see I got fortunate enough for Achane to fall in one league. He just had a soft tissue injury, though, so maybe you knock him down a little bit depending on how he looks leading up to the season, right? We don't know if he's going to be in practice. We don't know if he's going to be back in a week or 2 or in multiple days, or it's very uncertain right now. So keep an eye on Achane's injuries. Jonathan Taylor, I feel like he's just rock solid. He finished out the year super, super well last year. He's not going to catch a ton of passes, but I do have a lot of faith in his ability just as a runner. I mean, he is so efficient on the ground. He should be able to score a lot of touchdowns, even in an offense that isn't projected to score a ton. So I really like Taylor at this point. I still feel very confident in a build around him with an anchor running back approach too. So really like Taylor. And then if you can get another one of those receivers from that tier of 3 with London, AJ Brown, and Ladd McConkey, I still feel like that is a solid way to go in round 3. Now, do you want to wait too much longer to get your first running back? I don't know. That's where people are going to be a little bit hesitant to go receiver there without a running back. So I do kind of like Achane in the 3rd round, but depending on who falls, you might not get that chance, and it's either Jonathan Taylor or one of those receivers. So I think that gets a little bit closer in value. So I'm going to go back to team 1 now, right? I got one of each player, and I went with George Kittle in this draft. So you might be looking at that like the way Kittle makes it to the middle of round 4. But I do think in some leagues, especially 10-team leagues, tight ends go a little bit slower. And so I do think that some spots, especially in Superflex, he might fall a little bit. And so I go in the middle of round 4, and I felt pretty good about that pick because there are teams that I like to build out that are just one of each position and then kind of color in all of the number 2s. And so that's what I did with this build, right? And I get Tyreek Hill. You guys know he's my number 12 receiver. And I got him much later than that. So I do feel good about getting Tyreek Hill. Jared Goff fell back to me in round 6. I have not been getting that a lot in my mock drafts. So I definitely feel like he was a good value there. And then Trevion Henderson. I mean, I don't think anybody has risen more than Trevion Henderson. So I don't anticipate is going to stay down in this range for very long, but I was very excited about the start to this team. So, like I said, you kind of get to play the board, and I feel like that worked out really well here because Tyreek Hill fell, and then Goff fell, and then Henderson fell. And it just was like, boom, I get my wide receiver 2, my quarterback 2, and my running back 2, and I really felt like I started this team off very strong. I still really like Courtland Sutton too. So to get him in round 8, I felt like was a great value. And then the rest of this team kind of just colored in, right? Back to running backs and receivers. And a lot of them, Aaron Jones, Tracy, Javonte, and Bigsby. I think those guys should all be the ones to start the season anyways in their backfields. So hopefully one of those guys or 2 of those guys ends up sticking and becomes, a contributor for me during bye weeks or in injuries, that type of stuff. Tracy's obviously has Scatterbo kind of looking over his shoulder a little bit. And then Aaron Jones has Jordan Mason, who they traded for and signed. Javonte Williams just isn't that good anymore. And kind of Bigsby, that's kind of a mess in Jacksonville. So you're really looking at the possibility basically from that group of hitting one guy. And that's always kind of what I'm going for anyways. And I try and draft at least one guy like Aaron Jones that I feel pretty good about, that his role should be relatively safe as long as he's healthy. And then the other 2 receivers that I drafted down here, I like a lot. Emeka Egbuka has been flying up boards. I mean, I got him in round 11 here, but I'm comfortable drafting him as high as round 9 in this type of format, right? So I think wherever you anticipate you need to take him to get him is something that I'd be very comfortable doing. I think he can contribute right away. I don't think Godwin's going to start the year, and I think with all the reports coming out of camp, I just don't think that there's a situation where he's not going to play. So he's going to be out there. He's going to be playing a lot. And if Baker decides that, he's kind of just going to lock in on him as the number 2 target to start the year, I feel like his upside is through the roof. Going over to my team 2 now. So I walked through the first 3. And in this league, Kyren was the one that fell to me, and I'm going to be taking Kyren in round 4 every single chance I get. He did sign his deal, so I feel like the volume is just too much to ignore. He literally is out there all the time. He gets all the goal line work, and he's slightly involved in the passing game, so not a ton. But there are games where he'll have 4 or 5 catches, and that's when he really pops off. So 2 years ago, he was second in points per game. Last year, he wasn't quite that good, but I still think top 10 is well within his range of outcomes. Despite the fact that I have him ranked 11, I definitely think he can still finish as a top 5 running back. And to get that in round 4, I think is a very good value. And then you go down to Garrett Wilson. He kind of fell too. He's been really hard to rank and really hard to draft. I just feel like with Justin Fields not looking good in the preseason and just with his history in general, I feel like it's not great. So Garrett Wilson is somebody that I'm not specifically targeting, but at this value, I just felt like I was more than comfortable to go in as my number 2 receiver. Jordan Love, again, I didn't want to get boxed out of quarterback, and quarterbacks went faster in this mock than they did in the one for team 1 there. And so even though Goff was gone, and even though I was looking at kind of quarterback 18 at that point, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go in on Love, and I'm going to try and get the rest of my team filled out from there. So that's kind of where I was at with taking Love in round 6, and then Sutton round earlier than the last team. But again, he's another one of those players where I just have him ranked so far above the consensus that it can get a little bit difficult to know when exactly you should strike to make sure you get somebody that you like that. So I'm in on Sutton. I don't mind picking him anywhere. You can see in the 3rd team here, I picked him in round 7 as well. So, as somebody that I definitely think can be a solid starter in a top 15 wide receiver, and getting him in round 7 is still a value to me. Going back down then, the rest of the running backs here, you see I picked Javonte again in round 12, but I got Harvey and Swift, 2 guys that I like quite a bit actually here. So I played the ADP game a little bit with taking Harvey and then Swift, because ADP has Harvey above Swift on Sleeper, but I prefer Swift. So, to me, I don't mind taking Swift in round 8 either. And I was very fortunate that he made it back to me in round 9. So I feel very good about the running backs on this team now, right? I'm going to be starting running back in flex on this team if this was my build. And Harvey, maybe he doesn't play a ton on passing downs to start the year, but he is a solid pass catcher. And once he figures out the pass protection, I think he might just take over as the full workhorse here. He's been playing a lot on early downs in the preseason, and I do think that he is much more explosive than J.K. Dobbins at this point. Although Dobbins is still a very good runner. So, I think maybe it's a little bit of a backup situation there for Dobbins on early downs, and Harvey's going to get the chance to start and kind of dominate carries on 1st and 2nd down. Also last year, Javonte had 70 targets, and a lot of that was coming on 1st and 2nd down. So just because Harvey's not going to be the pass catching back, the 3rd down back per se, I do still think that there's an opportunity here for him to catch a lot of passes. So maybe not 70 targets, but maybe he gets 50 targets and catches 30, 35 of them. And if he does take on any 3rd down work as the season goes on, I think the upside could be enormous there for Harvey. And then you see I take a Puka here in round 10. I wanted to highlight that in the team before, that I do think he's a huge target down here at this point in the draft. You have to try and make sure you get him. Because I just think the talent's there. He's a 1st-round pick, and he's going to hit the ground running. I'm not entirely sure why we haven't seen a bigger shift in his ADP, but I think if he's continuing to go low, you just got to continue to take him and just enjoy the value down there. And then Stephon Diggs. We've been getting some awesome clips from him with Drake May just being the number 1, getting a lot of targets in camp. And so he's still coming off the ACL, but he looks like he's running very well, cutting very well. And so I'm getting more and more excited to pick him. And even though we always suggest don't draft guys too high coming off injuries in round 11 or 12 even sometimes, I think that's great value for Diggs. I think that is something that you should definitely consider. And then on this team, I waited all the way until the end of the draft to pick everybody's favorite tight end, Kyle Pitts. So I just wanted to throw him on here. So I picked Pitts, and I have him ranked at tight end 14, I think, and Sleeper's algorithm starts taking tight ends really fast at the end of the draft. So Pitts was just the guy that was there, and at this cost, I don't mind taking a shot because if he doesn't work out in week 1 or 2, you can just move on to whoever's performing better. So not that I advise picking Kyle Pitts, but that's what I decided to do here. And then the last guy I picked was JJ McCarthy. The chances that he's available in round 14 of your Superflex leagues are close to, if not all the way 0. And you see I ended up taking him as my second quarterback in team 3 in round 9. So, his sleeper's algorithm is kind of horrible. So I probably should have picked like a Tua Tagovailoa or an Anthony Richardson or a Geno Smith down here. Just highlighting that you can get a third quarterback. And then moving over to team 3. So you get the 2 wide receivers, and you are definitely urgently looking at running back. And to get Chase Brown here is awesome, I feel like. He's got all kinds of upside. He showed he can be the workhorse last year, and I think they're going to let him do it this year. So Chase Brown, definitely somebody that I'm targeting. I would pick Chase Brown ahead of Kyron Williams, so I didn't get that chance on team 2, but Chase Brown, awesome anchor running back in my opinion too. If you didn't want to go back to that, right, and you're going to urgently kind of address a different position, I think you can wait at running back if Chase Brown is the one that you get. So I didn't do that here, right? I picked Trevion Henderson in round 5, and obviously you see the round 5 versus the round 7 difference in these mocks. So again, one of those players, rookies are really hard to nail down exactly where they're going to go, what their value is going to be. And he's just one of those players that feels like he's going to be rocketing up boards as we get closer and closer to the season. He had another great preseason showing, 4 carries, 20 yards, and a touchdown. And his touchdown was a tough run to get in. And so I just think that he's going to be in a situation where he can thrive. Now, he did play behind Antonio Gibson, which I thought was interesting, but I think that's more just highlighting the role that he's going to be in and not changing what he's going to be doing. So somebody is going to be running on early downs between the tackles in front of him, and he's going to get feathered in for 10 to 12 carries and 5 targets would be my guess early in the year. And that's kind of what Gibbs was like early in his first season. So if that grows as the season goes on, you're going to be super happy to have him as the season pushes forward. Then I went back to wide receiver, right? Kind of attacked that with the intent of waiting on quarterback. So maybe I would have gone in on quarterback again in round 6 or even round 7. But, I went in hard to get McMillan, and that's definitely somebody that in round 6, if I can get in my 10-team Superflex leagues, I'm going to be taking a shot on here. So I really like Tet. Really think that he's going to get targeted a ton in this offense. And we saw Deontay Johnson, and we saw Adam Thielen at points last year be very good for fantasy. And if this team is firing on all cylinders to start the year, I think Tet might just be super good right away. So I have him ranked as wide receiver 23 right now, and I feel like I should be pushing him up, but I have him ranked right next to DK Metcalf and Cortland Sutton. So I don't have any problem taking a shot here in round 6. And then, with Sutton, I already kind of gave my spiel on Sutton. Also, if you're still here and you have not hit that subscribe button yet, that would be excellent for us. Would help us out a lot. We're trying to push towards 750. But let's get back to the rest of Team 3 here. So we've got DeAndre Swift and Tyron Tracy at running back. So you see me take Tracy in 2 of these drafts. And I know people are probably hesitating a lot at this point in the year to take him because they spent the 4th round pick on Cam Scatterbo. We saw him in the college football playoff do really well. He had an unbelievable game. But he is dealing with a hamstring injury. He has missed a ton of practice time. And I don't know how involved in the offense he's going to be to start the year. He was still listed behind Singletary on the offensive depth chart. So not that that's going to be the case, but it's just interesting to see Tracy continue to go so low when last year when he got picked up as a waiver wire ad, everybody was in on playing him. He was showing up in the top 20 all the time. So, this is very much a workload concern. And I think early in the year, it's not going to be there. And he's going to be able to be plugged in as a starter very comfortably. And so I usually like to take a shot on players like that, right? Like we see that last year with Jerome Ford and Chuba Hubbard, and it really worked out well with Chuba, obviously. Ford, not as much, but, you take the shots down here on players like that. And if you hit, you got a guy that is going to set your team apart. Then I decided to go in on JJ McCarthy. So that's very interesting too, right? You see the difference in draft spots there, but I do have McCarthy ranked at 20. And so when you wait until round 9, right, when you're filling out your final starting position, basically, and the quarterbacks thin out really quick. And in 10-team leagues, especially in 3 wide receiver, everybody's trying to fill out their starting lineups pretty quickly. And in round 9, the chance that somebody's taken 3 is not that high, and the chances that multiple people have taken 3 is really low. So you can kind of count on getting quarterback 20 or 21 in this range, and that's what happened with me and McCarthy. I got my quarterback 20 in the 9th round, and I'm pretty comfortable with doing that, right? I feel like the rest of my team filled out really well. I got Swift as my first bench player, and then Tracy to back him up, and Puka and Shaheed as receivers there. So, starting an extra receiver in my lineup, I feel like raises my floor and my ceiling a little bit there too, with Sutton specifically. I really like him going into the year. And so, if you want to wait, and, it's the difference between quarterback 15 and 20, and, the guy that you like, say Goff is the one that you want, and he kind of goes, and then it's like, I don't know really where I'm going to go at quarterback. And you decide to fill out your team. I think that strategy works extremely well, and you still get somebody with as much upside as McCarthy. And maybe in round 10 or 11, you go a little bit more aggressively after a quarterback. So I guess I kind of played the ADP game a little bit here with Trevor Lawrence going around 13. And there are people out there that will probably have Lawrence ranked ahead of McCarthy, because I have Lawrence at 21, ranked 1 spot behind McCarthy. So overall, I think the attacking quarterback and knowing how your league is going to draft quarterbacks is a huge advantage in making sure that you don't miss, but also that you get players that you're comfortable starting, and that should be relatively good even at the back end of quarterback 2. So obviously then I go in on Tucker Kraft, and I think we talked about him in the tight end preview as kind of the last guy that feels like it's somebody that you're excited to draft or play, and so waiting this late for tight end isn't necessarily advisable, but I did want to highlight how you can still get somebody this late that you can be decently excited about, and that there are people ranking in the top, well inside the top 10. And there is a situation where he's the number 2 behind Matthew Golden, right? If they kind of move off or move forward with Kraft and with Golden as their top options this year, and kind of move away from some of the other guys that they've had on the team. Reed plays that big play role in the slot, and then Dobbs outside is going to play a lot, but we kind of know what he is. So, I think there could be an opportunity here for Kraft to see 6, maybe 7 targets a game and be pretty useful for fantasy. And I think he's a unique tight end to him as a player specifically, because there aren't a lot of guys that can score from anywhere on the field at the tight end position, but he's one of them. He had multiple touchdowns over 50 yards last year. And so when he gets free in the open field, to be able to actually get that score, not get caught from behind, I think is a huge skill to have at tight end. And so it's another reason why I really like him. He's young. He's only 25 years old, and should be heavily involved in this offense. And if it does swing back towards more passing, I think he's being undervalued currently. All right, and with that, there's 3 different teams from the 5 slot. We look forward to talking to you in the next one.